listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. I'm Carolyn Schnare with NACS. Here we are in the middle of 2020, and what a year it's been. So we decided to try something new, to step back from current events and do something a little differently for the next 3 special episodes. We've created a new set of podcasts that look at specifics around a few categories. We're going to look at broad trends, what's going on at the store level, and potential future trends and disruptors. We're also going to try something different and dropping them all at once. You told us you like to binge podcasts, so here you go. With most of America and the world just now coming out of a pandemic lockdown, people are finally starting to hit the road for work, for road trips, or just to get back to normal. What does this mean for gas sales, for the convenience industry as a whole? We're going to learn about that and more in this series. In this episode, we're going to talk about fueling. For most operators, gasoline is where they can trace their roots in this industry. Gasoline is their business. And their goal is to get you inside that store after filling up. We'll talk more about some of those products today and in the next 2 episodes. We're going to talk about liquids in this series, those that go in your car and those that go in your body. Now back to fueling. As 2020 began, fuel demand had basically normalized, down from a record high consumption a few years ago. Electric vehicles, the growth of ride shares like Uber and Lyft, and the move towards city living were all expected to reduce demand. Then the pandemic hit and demand cratered, falling nearly 50%. It's coming back as people get moving again, but it's a slow change. I talked to Jeff Leonard, one of our regular hosts, about the industry's embrace of fueling and the strategy behind it.
Convenience stores really embraced fueling in the mid-'80s, and that's when they became the dominant players because they could offer a competitive advantage. You didn't necessarily have to have full serve. It was self-serve, and as a bonus, you can go inside the store and get something else. So that's when fueling really took off, and it just set about a different mindset for convenience stores that they went from beyond that derisive term, the mini mart, to a convenience store that had a variety of services. It could be gas, it could be ATMs. All of a sudden you started seeing food service and prepared food, and it really expanded what a convenience store could be. And that all started with fueling. In this country, there are about 39 million fill-ups a day, and about 32 million of them are at a convenience store. So convenience stores sell about 80% of the gas in the country. Over the first half of the year 2020, the fuel supply and demand has been all over the place. Now, there are spikes this way, and then there's spikes that way. So it's certainly not normal times, but when you look at longer trends, clearly there will be less driving. But at the same time, there won't be less demand for convenience.
So Jeff, NACS surveys consumers about fueling. What exactly do they say?
No one likes filling up. But how can you make the fill up not a hassle? And I know that doesn't really sound like a slogan that you'd want to go out with in an ad campaign, but the idea of our business is about convenience. It's taking away problems. It's solving problems they didn't know they had. And when you talk about problems related to convenience, it's time. How can you get them in and out so fast? They didn't even really think about the experience if that's all they wanted. We know that 52% of gas customers go inside the store. Some to use the bathroom, some to use an ATM, some just to check things out. But more often than not, they're buying something. And in a normal business cycle, the margins inside the store are better than at the pump. So it's always good to get that gas customer and get them inside the store.
Prices always seemed to be the top reason to select a store to fill up. Is that still the case?
No matter what the gas price is, you ask anybody, it's too high. But when we survey customers, we also learn other things about preferences. And certainly the gas price has always been the highest stated preference. But what we've really seen the last few years is the preference is about what the store does. And let me give you a perfect example. We ask consumers, would you go 5 miles out of your way to save 5 cents a gallon? Now, historically, that is always the majority of customers. And it is again this year. 63% say they would go 5 minutes out of their way to save 5 cents a gallon. But we asked a new question. Would you go 5 minutes out of your way because you liked that store? And 72% said yes. So that clearly says, yes, gas price is important, but how you operate, who you partner with, and how you tell that story to the customer is more important. When we talk to consumers, the brand still matters, but the brand matters in different ways now when you talk about fuels. I remember growing up, I bought the fuel that my father said he bought because his father said to buy it. But over the last few years, we have brand preference that's still 1 in 10 Americans. But we've also seen the preference for the brand has changed. What is there besides the liquid? And the liquid is important because everybody has different additives and there's different advantages about each one in terms of their consumer preferences. But what I'm talking about is what else is the brand about? What is the loyalty program? What are some of those other elements that make somebody say, that's the brand for me? It's certainly expanded beyond the liquid, and I think that's a really good opportunity for a lot of retailers.
So, looking toward the future, what are consumers most interested in seeing more of at their stores?
When we ask consumers about new technologies, we ask them about delivery, we ask them about all these other things that we've seen over the last few years garner headlines. One of those is contactless payments. And it turns out this year, and this is pre-pandemic, contactless payment was of what consumers were most interested by. We also did a post-pandemic or during the pandemic survey, and of course it increased even higher. And we asked a follow-up question. Why? Is it because it saves you time? Is it because it saves you money? Is it because there's some cleanliness factors, or is it just cool? Overwhelmingly, it's because it saves you time and because there's cleanliness safety issues. So contactless payment has multiple benefits. It will carry well beyond concerns over the virus or anything like that. It does save time. It feels faster. And if it feels faster to the consumer, it is faster.
So what does the future hold and what can you do about it? But more on that after the break.
This episode of Convenience Matters is brought to you by Gilbarco Vita-Root. Whether it's outside, inside, underground, or in the cloud, Gilbarco has the solutions your site needs. Since 1865, Gilbarco has manufactured the world's leading fueling and convenience store equipment and technology. If you are looking for a partner that you can trust, one with over 150 years of industry experience, you can learn more about Gilbarco at www.gilbarco.com.
Welcome back. What will be the fuel of the future? Gasoline will clearly remain in the mix, but experts are putting more faith in the growing electric vehicle market. We're going to hear a little more on EVs later. Let's get back to good old gasoline in the place where drivers like me use it most. It's clear that people will continue to fill up, but how is the fill up changing? I talked to Chris Whitley, Vice President of Marketing and Sales for Gilbarco Vita-Root, the world's largest manufacturer of gas pumps. Chris has been with Gilbarco for more than 30 years, which I'm fairly certain qualifies him as an expert, at least in my humble opinion. He's seen pumps evolve over the years, and from his perspective, they always take customer needs into account when designing and releasing new equipment. Just like Jeff, Chris starts right off the bat embracing where fueling falls on the customer radar. How does the company look at the fueling experience? Chris?
Pumping gas is one of those things that you have to do. I don't think anybody puts it at the top of their shopping excursions that they like to make. So we just try to take it from the standpoint of making sure from a product that it's fast and seamless, as unconfusing as it can be from a payment standpoint, and that they're able to get on and off that site or inside the store as quick as possible. Now, with all that said, we've made pretty big investments over the last 10 years with media systems, couponing, merchandising type displays on the gas pump so that they can get, weather news, other entertainment to take some of the time away that they're standing in front of the pump. I'd say that at this point, 40% of the installed base of dispensers, because of the EMV upgrades, have those merchandising screens in them. And the vast majority of those are running infotainment type content, but every store owner gets a certain amount of the time on those screens. And that's typically what they do is they'll put coupons up, come on inside, buy a cup of coffee and get a free donut, or come on inside and try our pumpkin spice latte. That's a local retailer a couple of years ago that had great success pushing their own brand of a pumpkin spice latte. And I think people typically wouldn't think that I'm going to go to a C-store for that type of beverage, but they had a really good one. And they started by taking a coupon promotion and making it free for people to come on in the store and try it. It worked very well for them. They didn't have to keep giving it away for free, but they built up some awareness and knowledge of what they were doing with their coffee bar. So, I think in so many cases anymore, people are really leveraging that. And I'd also say that the ones that do it in the most simple manner of, one coupon or one idea, we've seen tend to do a lot better than some retailers may get into it thinking I can really exercise this tool set to do a lot of things, and then underestimate that you have to be staffed and you have to have people that have the time to manage that content on the forecourt. Because you don't want to run into a situation where you've got so much of it going on and you were doing a beer and ice special at Labor Day weekend, and then come Thanksgiving, that same couponing program is running in the series of things that people get presented to them. So keep it simple, drive awareness into the store. It works wonderfully, but also just balancing out that you've got the capability to do things like that at a gas pump. I think the argument would be, is going that deep and that complex really what you want to be doing on a gas pump?
Jeff told us earlier about how the arrival at Pay at the Pump added a whole new level of convenience for customers. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
The whole Pay at Pump on the forecourt was just sort of all the planets, moons, and stars aligning. If we go back into the 1990s, when we first came out with those devices, a lot of people were afraid that it was going to take away from C-store sales, that people would pay outside and they just drive away. And there was another problem that the oil companies were having. The EPA tank regulations were coming in, as well as we were getting rid of leaded gasoline. And the cost to do those tank upgrades for the industry were massive. And it led to the first big reduction in the number of gas stations in the U.S. So if you were an oil company at the time, you really didn't want to let go of that fuel volume. If I close 10% of my stores, do I lose 10% of my overall volume? What we were able to show by taking credit card payment on the island, there's 3 times a day that they build those stations for. It's the morning, noon, and evening rush hours. And you have to optimize your forecourt, because if you can't get that volume through, people will go down the street. You're not worried about 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. It's morning, noon, and night. By putting Pay at the Pump, you automatically got a 20% increase in throughput capacity. That doesn't mean your throughput went up 20%. It's just you had the capacity to take 20% more vehicles at those peak periods because they didn't have to go inside. And that really led to the whole Pay at Pump explosion in the early and mid 90s. Was by adding that technology onto your forecourt, you could keep your throughput and your capacity and thereby your volumes. And if you're a multi-store oil company, you didn't have to worry about store closings over not being able to make the investment in the tank upgrades or what was going on as we phased out leaded gasoline. Once that footprint was there, and I'm drawing on my memory, if Gilbarco in the late 90s, we probably went from 5% factory installed penetration of card readers in the pump to 85% in a 5-year window. It absolutely took off. And then because of all the pump replacements that went on at the same time, the industry became saturated in a good way pretty quickly, that as a consumer, you could find Pay at the Pump pretty much everywhere you went. The second thing that was a surprise to everybody came back to this concern over the impact on C-store sales. And many of our large customers actually found out C-store sales went up, and I believe it was on an average close to 10%. And by doing a lot of ethnography at the time, what was happening is, as a business person, if you were in a hurry on your lunch break, you wanted in and out of that site as quick as possible. So you would go to someplace that had pay at pump. Other people that were coming inside because they needed to grab a drink or something quickly, once they got in the store, you didn't have the big lineup of everybody waiting to pay for their gas because they'd already paid out on the pump. So you were more inclined to shop and pick up other items, and thereby basket size went up at the same time, pay at the pump hit, and more people paid outside. Some of the payment technology that's been available on the dispensers that a lot of people aren't aware of boils down to just contactless payment. The installed base of contactless is significant. We're shipping over close to 90% of what leaves our factory for the last year and a half goes out with contactless. And there's a lot more education that needs to go on by the card brands and by the retailers that it's available on the dispenser, because consumers just still aren't aware of it. And again, with the COVID situation, the more things that we can do from a payment transaction standpoint to reduce the amount of things you have to touch and lay your hands on is a good thing for everybody. And I'd also point out that the contactless transactions are so much faster. If you tap your card on a pump or on a pin pad inside a store, it's a fraction of the time it takes versus inserting the chip card and letting all the transactions run that way. So it speeds things up a little bit as well, and it's just a much better experience. So as we look forward, we're going to see more and more use of phone payment and phone apps. I think we're also careful about that, though, because you've got a generational piece where there's certain generations that doing a transaction on a phone, whether that's just tapping the phone like it is a piece of hardware as a contactless card, or doing the transaction via the UX on a phone, is very appealing to certain generations. And also, once you've opened that up, you've got an opportunity to tie in more of the loyalty, more of the individual specific targeting with advertisements or merchandising programs. But there's also a couple generations of people that fill up at gas stations that are going to continue to be card-based. And you've got to make sure that you don't go too hard one way or the other and bifurcate the people that are coming into those stores.
I know now, as we head further towards the now extended EMV deadline for gas pump card acceptance in April of 2021, that leapfrogging into the contactless payment makes a huge difference to customers too. Speaking of this looming deadline, any last thoughts on that?
Retailers, especially, when they're doing an upgrade and all the activity that's going on with EMV, they have to make a decision of whether to retrofit an existing pump with an EMV payment terminal or buy new pumps. And we find that those that can always lean towards put a new pump on the forecourt. And the reason being, and this isn't a Gilbarco quote, we hear this repeatedly from customers, that they find after they refresh a forecourt, that store will get in the neighborhood of a 10% increase in fuel volume bump for a 6-month window. And it's because the consumers driving by, they see it, it looks clean, it looks fresh. Now, that's more than just gas pumps. You have to have a good looking canopy, great lighting at night. But new dispensers increase their fuel volume more than retrofitting existing dispensers. And for those that are aware of that and leverage it, they also understand it gives them a great opportunity, especially when now those new dispensers go in with merchandising screens, to take that, whatever it is, 3 month, 6 month bump in fuel volume because more customers coming to the site, to use that technology to get more customers to also go inside the store. And as they start leveraging loyalty and merchandising systems, they're trying to do that for repeat business. So it just makes great sense for them to have that forecourt looking as clean and fresh as they can have it.
I wanted to tie all of this together and talk with a retailer to see how they appreciate the fuel category, their bread and butter, if you will. So I gave a call to a retailer in New England to hear a little bit about him and his company.
My name is Skip Potter. I am the IT director with Maple Fields and the parent company RL Valley Incorporated. We are a chain of 48 locations in Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York. I think Maple Fields just speaks for itself. We're kind of a step above. When you walk in our stores, it's kind of like, wow, we want to be a destination that people are going to. And, we're doing that through offerings of having the great food program we have, giving them the best experience that they can when they're coming in, giving them the levels of technology, giving them ownership of their transaction, having really quality people that really make the day. When somebody walks in and you have a conversation with somebody, positivity breeds positivity, and negativity will never come back. That person will never walk back in. So it's really important that we give everybody the experience. And if fueling slows down, well, then we've got to do more to keep them coming in the store. At one point in time, you didn't have the ability of doing pay at the pump, reading technology off of a mag stripe, and then from that evolving into chip and pin technology with EMV, with a much higher level of security and encryption and information being housed on a chip as opposed to a magnetic stripe, to technology on the dispensers being well designed for the ability of having lockdown card readers and making it much harder for skimming devices to work as technology increases. And then now, also adding in contactless payment, whether it be Google Wallet, Apple Pay, and the dispensers that we currently are ordering all have contactless readers on them, because we do realize that frictionless payment is definitely a thing of the future. And so eliminating touch points in this day and age, in the world that we know now, and the world that we knew a year ago, is never going to be the same. So what we're living now is not ever going to go back to the way it was. So we need to be prepared for those changes as we look forward to the future of fueling experiences or convenience store experiences. And at the end of the day, the technology that we're deploying, the technology that we're putting out there for the consumer is to make their experience as good as they want it to be. We want to keep in mind that everybody has a schedule to keep. And if somebody wants to take the time to make that transaction be a little bit more or less hectic, they can. Or if they really just want to get in and out, we're putting that technology forward for them to do that with express ordering, with express lane, with contactless payments, with DoorDash, with call-in services, with curbside pickup, all of those type of things. We just want to make sure that we're reaching the masses, and ultimately it's giving the customer the best experience they can have with ownership of what they're looking for at that time. In the back of my mind is the technology side, the automation side, the customer experience side. But what's going to happen in 10 years from now, especially in this day and age, I have no idea. So for me, my focus is how can I make the best experience currently, and looking forward, do the best they can, keep the train moving forward, but with a sense of not really knowing what the future looks like.
Speaking of the future, I wanted to get his take on electric vehicles and making that convenient.
Most of the rapid chargers you go to, you're either using a key fob or a radio card or something of that nature. It was important for me to be able to have the flexibility of having somebody be able to use their credit card at the charger. We have deployed at one of our locations, and this is a kind of a test to see what the market response is. But we have 3 DC rapid chargers. And it was very imperative for me to be able to make that experience be consumer friendly. And so that was a big push for me, working with Gilbarco And I can't say enough about, how enjoyable it always is to work on projects with them. And this was no different. We gave the customers the opportunity to make payments with their credit card at the rapid charger. And we are, as far as I know, one of the very first to do that on DC rapid chargers. But again, it's the convenience that we were looking for.
So, the next time you fill up your gas tank, take a look at that gas pump and think of all you now know. Whether this is your business, or if you're a driver like me, know that we need them just as much as they need us, whoever they is to you. That's all for today. We hope you enjoyed this first episode in this special series about convenience categories. In the next 2 episodes, we'll talk more about another kind of liquid fuel, the kind you drink. Whether cold from a fountain or chilled just right in a bottle or can, beverages are a key driver for customers and are just as important to a retailer's bottom line as the liquid that goes into their customers' cars. Thank you for listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. And thank you to Jeff, Chris, and Skip for their insights. To learn more, visit convenience.org.